Amazing. Okay, we are live. Tracy, take it away.
And you saved me. She saved me because again, once again experiencing technical difficulties. No,
Well,
no at home IT, no at home IT department. So what are you smoking?
actually, it is LSD, and I'm not mad at that.
Ah, so is that like a sativa or an indica or what is it?
It's a hybrid.
It's a hybrid. I do not think oops, I don't think I've seen that one. And I actually don't know what I'm smoking because we were cleaning up the living room. We're just like rearranging the whole house. And my husband brings me in that what I forgot was my previous box. You know, where you all have boxes. And this one, like, I start opening what's in here. And I start pulling out rolling papers and stuff. And I'm like, wait a minute, there's like a little baggie in here. And there's a baggie with like probably like close to, it's the only time I've like lost my weed, close to half quarter. And then there was a little like a OCS container. And at the beginning, like a year ago, David got a bunch of things just to try them out. And so this, I don't know if we just kept the container and there was something else in there, but it's like really super dry. And the only thing, I never forget my weed. Right. So I figured it must have happened when we went away like over a border a year ago. So a year and a half ago. So we couldn't obviously take our medicine with us. I must have left it in my cupboard there. And then when we got back, just got like bought more. Forgot about that little leftover in the baggie. So
Ooh, those are the best ones. It's like finding a $20 bill in your pants, but it's the equivalent of.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. I remember being really happy when I came back from backpacking through Europe in 1991 when I had like saved up all my money from working full time for 4 months. And then I went backpacking with a friend of mine. And obviously, you know, there was very little. We went to Amsterdam and smoked a lot there. But other than that, most of the time we weren't smoking unless some guy in England handed us a joint or something. But I remember coming back and like being so happy. I stole it to my dad's. I found my cassette tape where I always hid my hash. And I had like a cassette tape. And sure enough, there I still had like a half a gram of hash. I was like,
Oh my
yes.
God. I absolutely love that. Actually, I have a funny hash story. When I was in Nepal, Kathmandu, very difficult to find.
Real hash. Really?
Well, for the most part, right? Because it's not legalized and it's still kind of taboo. You have to be careful. And all of my colleagues, my friends say, actually, I don't know if I should be saying this on live, but I am a bloodhound when it comes to that. I'm very, very good at sourcing it and making sure that it happens. So sure enough, I meet this incredible gentleman, and I wish that I had his link. I would show it on the banner because he still does tourism there, and he's incredible. And before we actually started paying attention to the science and like understanding the difference between, an indica or sativa, people would still be, and like as a teenager, people would be into it and say, oh, this came from this. And I wasn't interested. And I used to joke like, oh, did it come from the Himalayan mountains on a donkey? Well,
It did.
you I'm now, 30 years old. And sure enough, in between the Asian Hemp Summit, this gentleman came down on a donkey
That's
with
hilarious.
a brick of pink Himalayan hash.
And you were
And
like, oh, it really did.
I was like, wait, like this is happening. And then what's funny though is I became very popular very quickly because I was the girl with hash. But then we were all like, wait, how are we going to smoke this? How are we going to do this? And I kind of kicked it old school and I was like, well, I know hot knives, but we didn't have something hot enough. So actually we had a colleague who ended up MacGyvering. So that's my fun abroad hamster
What
hash.
did he use? What did he make?
It was a she because the
Oh,
future
she.
is Mira. And it was really cool. It was a card. She was like, I need one of your bobby pins. I was like, I can do that. And it was a card with a bobby pin in and a cup over it. So it was capturing all of this. It was very interesting.
See, we will figure it out.
When it comes to survival, it's very interesting what we as humans are capable of.
Especially the cannabis community. I'm telling you,
Absolutely.
we are a resilient people.
And
Oh
we're
my gosh. You know the classic apple pipe bong that you see in the movies or the old, like an apple? So
Yeah.
I'd never done that until 2 years ago at Kelly's Green Lounge. And all of a sudden, Mary Jane Baker pulls out, an apple. And she's like, they make pipes out of this. I'm like, oh, someone has to do that. And so they did. And it worked actually really well. We were passing it around because we passed things around in those days.
Oh,
And,
those were the days.
and it's like another time.
Oh, honestly.
Oh my
No,
goodness.
there actually somebody, I think it was my Nana actually. Hey Nana sent me and it's a funny meme that says like, oh, like any plans for Easter? And then it's somebody hitting it's a chocolate Easter bunny that's a bong. It would be Nana who said that.
And we missed 710, but happy 710.
Yes. Oh my
Whoops.
gosh.
Where are we? Happy 710 for us East Coasters. So here's my pen. And I'm rolling a joint to make it for 420. And to do that, I'm actually ripping apart 3 giant roaches that are here because for some reason I don't have a baggie in my office. It's really odd. I brought it upstairs 'cause everyone is upstairs. So
Oh,
I actually was not in my cave today.
For you, usually I don't sesh on that. It's usually CBD or my dogs, or I talk about that. But it's Saturday, and you invited me to join you, so I thought, what the heck?
There you go. You don't usually witch?
I don't usually sesh like during that, like everybody else does, and I want to know what they're up to. But for you, I
During the
did it for you.
And sometimes I don't, like I have it here and half the time it'll be sitting here and I realized I didn't even touch it through the whole thing because I ended up just chatting away and
And I think a
asking
lot of it too
questions.
is because of the pandemic and because we're not able to do like the conferences and everybody gets caught up in just being like, oh my gosh, like human interaction, even if it's
Exactly. And I love how Kim thought of it, even though she wasn't doing it, a year and a half ago. Any of the live streams, were like, let's just do it for a month in March while we're all under lockdown. And a year later, it's like, it's
and
an
it kind of
institution.
brings sanity for a lot of people too, right?
Exactly.
Like,
A lot of people really look forward to that moment of the day where like community thing, right? So
yeah.
where do you live?
I am in Stratford, Ontario.
Oh, okay. You're not too far. I
Not
know it's a beautiful place. I know walking there. My father-in-law doesn't live very far from there. He's 91 now. He doesn't live very far from there. But when they were last mobile a couple of years ago, we were walking all around, where up and down the hill where the school is up there. And we're all, are you a Stratford girl? Have you always been there?
I grew up here, was born here. I moved away when I was about 15 and I came back when 28, not to date myself, but about 2 years ago to take over the farm and kind of do that kind of thing. My great uncle founded the Stratford Festival. So
what?
Yeah, it's a really cool thing. And
so your family literally made Stratford because that's why it's internationally
that's a
known.
bold statement. And Stratford's a small. You have to be careful who you say that.
No, but obviously it's got a long history and it's its own beautiful city. But I mean, in terms of the international perspective, it's like Stratford is different from a whole bunch of other towns in the 519 because of that. It's beautiful and it's got the funding and it's got, I don't know about funding, but I mean.
That's the thing. At first they didn't because my great uncle, Tom, he fell in love with the festival in England. And like he actually the OG. And so he was like, wow, this is how we can boost our economy because Stratford was typically farmland. There wasn't a huge tourism pull. It wasn't there. Everybody called him cuckoo bananas. Like all of the citizens, the taxpayers, they're like, we're not paying into this tent Shakespeare. What are you talking
It'll never happen here.
Yeah, like they were like, what? That's like the most outrageous thing. We're all farmers and but cattle, cash crop farmers. So he pooled and pooled and pooled, and he ended up getting the funding, much to the town's dismay.
Brilliant.
It's a really cool story. And then cut to it's one of the biggest economy drivers for the town.
Exactly. And you can see the difference in Stratford compared to other cities of its size. Even like it's bigger than, I don't know how much bigger, but like compared to St. Mary's or Chatham or all these places, they have nothing at that. And they're like similar kind of farming communities. But Stratford, it's well taken care of. All the old buildings are well taken care of. And it looks like it's like a proud community. And they put money when you walk there, there's, the little dog walks and all the little, like all the little.
They do a good job on that. They still, a lot of, and don't get me wrong for everybody, but there's still, and that's why I'm leaning into it, because I'm like, well, everyone thought that Uncle Tom was crazy because they still think that I'm crazy for farming hemp, and it's still foreign to them. So
Really? So talk about that a bit. Talk. I was going to say talk about how what you're doing there in terms of hemp and how people are reacting and what is the farm.
yeah, so I actually oversee 4 different farms in Ontario. My personal farm is about 100 acres. So we've been doing that since 2018. Initially, it was met horribly. Like nobody would touch it.
Oh, really? Like, and when was initially? So this is 2015, you said? 18. Okay.
2018. And
And they were really close to it, even then on the cusp of legalization of cannabis.
it went
They didn't want anything to do with hemp. Huh.
it went and it wasn't even so much that. And I was very smart and pragmatic in that I knew legalization was happening. So I applied for my hemp license before it happened because I knew that it was kind of going to be that rush of, but what farm, and we've been legal since don't quote me on this, 1997 to grow industrial hemp in Canada. But that's a completely different ballgame from CBD. So when legislation happened, that's where farmers started to get confused and say, well, we can plant any of these genetics. And I was like, well, no, that's not the way it works. You need a license. And they were like, well, wait, why do I need a license? It's my
Oh,
farm.
stop.
Like,
Happy 420. Sorry. Happy 420, West Coasters. Sorry, go ahead.
no, you're good. We made it. Yay. Um, yeah, so there was a lot of confusion around that. And they used to grow in Perth East, like where specifically my farm is. They used to grow quite a bit of hemp actually, but I'm not really sure that faded out. Somebody, I guess, 20 years ago used their combine, just like a typical combine, and didn't realize the cutter they needed. And because hemp, the stalk is so fibrous, it completely wrapped up around the combine and ruining it. So that was like taboo for any farmer after that.
Oh, no. So then it got a bad reputation. It'll screw you up here.
Hemp got a bad rap up here. So I was like, well, no, now we're educated. We know the proper equipment that we need. We know what we need to do. So over the last few years, the same farmers that were like, oh, goodness, don't do it, don't do it. They're now slowing down. They're like, well, what did you spray it with? What did you do? And I'm like, no, that's the thing. It wants to grow. It's such a resilient, incredible plant.
So you're educating a lot of the other local farmers about it, basically.
I am certainly trying. Those that will listen, for sure.
And what happens to your hemp? Where are you growing it for, and what is it for?
So in the past, well, when I first did it, I did a test crop, and people told me to do 1 acre, so I did 50, because that's very much the way that I am. And I was like, well, what's the difference if 1 acre grows and 50 will grow? So I successfully, and I kind of just Johnny Appleseeded that with like an old like 1980s cedar. It was an experience, but I successfully yielded 93,000 kilos of biomass. So that it was a lot. They were not ready. They showed up with 1 truck. They needed 4. So then that kind of went off, and it was kind of just a buy to whatever they were using for the product. I wasn't really.
So it's easy to do that. There's just like a consortium that will buy it, and then they do whatever.
No, it's not easy.
No, okay.
That's why, and I tell all of my clients the same thing: do not seed until it's sold, unless you can eat that. But that's like any crop, right? Like the last couple of years have been really strange weather, and all like for every crop. So it is not easy, and the infrastructure is still not there. And that's why I've also shifted gears into doing a hempcrete project. So like we talk about farm to table, I want to grow. I am going to be doing that this season to do a pilot project and build a
very cool.
Thank you. Yeah. And that's the thing, right? If you want to grow your own, absolutely go for it. But unless you have a contract or you have it sold, do not go balls to the wall. Do not pull a Danyka 2018.
Wow. That's so how has it changed now in terms of I mean, you said in terms of the local acceptance of the farmers, are they able to just get into it then and just put it a crop, or do they need to get?
They're still watching. They've been doing the agriculture, and now, and what I do say, and I find this so fascinating about our industry, and you can attest to this because your background is communications, publicity, and public, like all that, and you're able to take that and put all of your knowledge into this industry. So there's a space for every person's knowledge.
Exactly.
And
Lots of room. Yeah.
right, and especially with our cannabis industry, we're marrying and we're kind of amalgamating agriculture with general farming, with business, with regulation, with communications. We're literally
That's true. We're creating a whole new industry out of all of these bits and pieces, which means theoretically you can create a really good one, but at the same time you're having to
we're building it as
over.
exactly. So we have these old school farmers they're like, well, hey, like we do it this way. This is what we know. This is, you know what I mean? Not what we're used to, but they're still watching because they're farmers. And I will give a big ups to all farmers. I remember when I first moved back, because I was a city, I was in, Yonge and Eglinton, Toronto. That was what I was comfortable with. And people were like, well, you're a farmer now. And I was like, no, I was offended by it. I am offended. I'm offended that I was offended. The amount of work and the amount of, knowledge, planning, and meticulousness, and all of that can go completely out the door if it rains on that one day, or if it doesn't rain on that one day.
So you've also got to be resilient, and you got to have a backup plan, and you got to be able to get back up when you.
Proud farmer. You have to put my name down twice because I have so much respect. But we were talking about, now it's all of these different things, and it's still daunting. And that being said, too, in our area, we have 2 dispensaries, like retail dispensaries, that went up. And I won't name names, although there's only 2, so I'm sure they would know who they are. But I went in there with my Nana because she wanted to get some edibles. So I was like, okay. And they had no idea what was going on. Like, they were
in terms of what they were selling, they didn't know about it.
They had no idea. And even Nana, Nana was like whispering. I'm like, Nana, they can hear you. They know, they know why you're here. But she was like asking if they have the 500 milligrams, because she knows what I've educated her. And so I asked that, and they're like, oh no, like you can't do that. And I was like, I promise you that you can. And they were like, oh. It's like, I'm not trying to make. I was like, I can show you that you can. So I think it was just, there was a little lack of education on that part, which is daunting because we're all talking about breaking the stigma, and education is so paramount.
Important. Yeah, exactly.
And when you get, like, if I wasn't there with Nina, not that Nina would go by herself. Well, maybe she would. I hope she would, actually, because I would hope that she would feel that she would be in good hands to be able to ask the questions and get the right answers. But when you have, people who aren't really sure and are going in that, and the person behind the counter is like,
they clearly don't know what they're talking about. Yeah.
I got pre-rolls for $12.
That's all I know. Or 0.002 edibles. All right. I don't know how many chocolates do people want me to eat to feel,
It's true. And it's not even specifically like in our community. It's a lot of places are doing that. So that's why I respect the retail openers, especially now in this tumultuous time, that have educated themselves and really, take the extra time for, seniors, or, just even anybody who doesn't really understand what it is that they're.
Yeah, and some are providing education, like they're partnering with people like my client Christina Shea, who does a lot of educating, or Mimi Cannabis, who I worked with last year, who does like you said, seniors, a lot of specific stuff on seniors, right? So yeah, so there's a lot. Some of the stores or LPs are, they're looking for some ways to get into that education component. But yeah, a lot of the people are just literally left on their own. And it's funny because we think people have some basic knowledge because we're all stuck in the cannabis community and we know this and we know that. And I remember recently a guy that I'd known for years and years, for 20 years, and years ago, we used to smoke hash together. He's an old OG hash guy, and things get legal, so he goes on one of these websites, and one of these, it's a site in DC, so it's not actually OCS, it's like a legacy site, and he starts asking me, so what is this they're selling about the shatter? What's this shatter? And I'm like, Oh yeah, I forgot. And this is guy that was in the cannabis community 20 years ago,
Yeah,
but but just a working guy, hasn't been like as engaged as we have been all this time. So all
right.
of a sudden, this is a new thing. Like he knows hash, he knows weed, he knows a lot, but he's heard about this stuff for a few years. But when is it? That made me realize, yeah, we think this stuff is common knowledge, but it's not. Even with cannabis
Mhm.
people, so to explain, well, it's kind of like, you remember the hash. It's kind of like it's the new hash, and explaining with the extract and all that. But yeah, so a lot of people don't even know. I shouldn't say don't even, like, because it's a bad thing. It makes sense they wouldn't know because they were just buying flour and
Yeah,
hash, and then all of a sudden now it's legal. Like if they weren't engaged with the medical community or the people that were pushing, you know what I'm saying? They
yeah.
weren't getting that.
Well, and even too, like to your point with the medical community, there aren't enough resources for nurses or medical practitioners who want to spread the good word of cannabis as a medicine. There's not enough resources for them to be able to go forward and say, like, alternatively you could be doing that, or like the information, like they would have to go and seek it out themselves, which
Exactly.
I implore everyone to do that anyways. But I still do think that there should be, like, you and I can go on to, a cannabis network, or even like what we're on right now, right, with Cam, and say, hey, like, what are you thinking? What does this clone look like? Or is this off? There's that sense of camaraderie and that, like, hey, like, maybe I know better. I don't think enough medical has that option. And if they
No,
do,
exactly.
and it's a huge money grab. Seniors on a pension cannot afford $500 a month on
That's
CBD.
that's the thing, exactly. No, and that's why I'm afraid they're going to be discouraging the home grows more and more. Like there's voices in their ear whispering
Mhm.
the home grows, and that's what I'm worried about. That we'll end up in this world where cannabis is legal, but only theirs, and only at at those prices, right? And that's, like you said, problematic for a lot of people,
Yeah.
especially for medicinal reasons and stuff. And even people who don't necessarily have a prescription, but a lot of cannabis use is medicinal, whether people have gone to
Yeah.
the doctor or not, right? They're using it, and now they're calm, so they don't have to go to the doctor and get some pharmaceutical. They never had to. So yeah,
And
that's
I do fear for that too. That's why we have to be loud and proud and have. And one thing that I will say is, like, don't abuse the privileges that we've been given. Right? There are people that are low key, and I get it. I'm not judging, but they're growing, way over
And those are
without a license.
and those are the things that get, everybody up in arms, and then get all the conservatives mad, like, see, and then, yeah, no, exactly. And then because that's the thing, there's some they're profiteers, right? That are like finding every which way to beat the system. And what they're actually doing is beating the patients because of, and other people at limited, yeah, because ultimately they're
No,
going to
it's so true.
restrict. Yeah, they're going to make those, and that's what they're going to use. Like you said, that's going to be the excuse that they use to make those restrictions, right? So, oh my gosh. So yeah, I guess we should end. It's
Yeah.
7:30 ish, so we should say our goodbye. No, go ahead. Say what you're saying. Go ahead.
No, actually, I will leave you with this fun story because you reminded me of it when you were talking about, like, introducing shatter and concentrate. And even I, like, that was I was like, wait, what is this? Like, tell me more. And when I was in Seattle for HempFest, do you know who Eddie Lepp is?
Yes.
Okay, so I
Yes,
felt like
Jim.
so ignorant because I was smoking a joint with him, and this is when we could all smoke joints, and
Hey, back in the day.
yeah, way back when. And so my friend who works for High Times, he like pinched me because he's like, "Do you know who that is?"
That you
And
were
I was like,
smoking with at that moment.
"Yeah, yeah." And I was like, "I'm like, he's a really nice man. I'm not trying
Seems
to,
nice.
right?" Like, part of my language. And I was like, "Oh my gosh." And so I was like, "Sir, I'm so sorry, I didn't know." So he was so sweet, and he was such a blast to hang out with. But everybody was so, like, starstruck, especially in the US. They were like, "You're a legend." And everybody was like, "You have to try this. You have to try this." And he was like, he sat back and
I can only smoke so much. Yeah, it must be like that everywhere he goes.
he's like, "How did this happen?" I was like, I'm like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, it was hash and it was weed and it was good hash and it was good weed. He's like, "What is this?" And I'm like, "We've made moves." He's like, "I'm just gonna hang in the tent for a moment." And I was
Yeah.
like, it was really cool to see, like, the OG, like,
Oh, I was gonna say the OG be like, well, okay.
Be like, whoa, what's this? And everybody was like so proud to be like, but I grew this, or I
Yeah,
did.
so you can go be like, the legend, my weed. Yeah, I still keep on talking about how, and I'm rarely like, Miss Star Trek. And it's funny, I look at the video that I was all professional introducing my client Mimi Cannabis because she wanted to meet Tommy Chong because he was in Kingston
Yes,
and she's from Kingston, and he's a senior, and she worked with seniors, right? So she was like, "That's my town. I have to be there." But the party was like super VIP, and not even VIP. They weren't even having. It wasn't even VIP. It was like, sorry, it was for the people that had put it on. Like it was basically
right.
a Leafy Things launch, and they were like, it was for their people and like one or two local media people, but it wasn't like the full. Anyway, I found a way. I traded some PR with them. I was like, I got my client in, so I get in there, and of course, once they agree to get Mimi, and I'm like, well, yeah, I'm accompanying her, and you have to let me bring my husband too, because otherwise they'll be a domestic. Tommy Chong is a different story now. We don't care about celebrities, but Tommy Chong, it's I don't want to be saying Dave's not here.
Oh
So,
my
but
god.
the funny thing, so in the video, when someone caught, I'm just like super professional, introducing Mimi, making sure they have the cards and all that. But later, like an hour later, when he was passing the joints around, he was passing a joint around, like a big ass joint. And this was the last party that I went to before COVID. This was in February, about 3 weeks before all of a sudden the COVID is right before when people were still passing joints.
Yes.
And Tommy Chong passed Dave a joint, like a big joint, and then I smoked it to here or whatever. And it was like a big roach like this, a big with like this. Anyway, it ended, it was like this big, and I'm like, guess what? It stops here. I'm not usually fangirl, but I'm framing this shit. So I literally framed it.
I love it.
This Tommy Chong bucket list. Like, come on. When Tommy Chong, like, I don't care how old and jaded and fucking don't care about celebrity publicity you are. If you're a Canna fan and Tommy Chong passes you a joint,
you frame it.
you say that joint. My kid was like, my adult daughter who's 28, she's like, that's not like you. That's what I'm like, I don't know. It's Tommy Chong. He passed like.
It matter. It's everybody has that feeling. Yeah, I can respect that.
And then it turned out even better that not even better, but it's even weirder because that was the last thing before COVID. So now I'm like, at least I got to smoke a joint with Tommy Chong. If we never do that again.
No regrets on framing it. You would have thought, like, I should have taken that. Now you know you did the right thing.
Now there's even more reason. It was actually probably the last, not only the joint I smoked with Tommy Chong, but it was probably the last joint that I passed around. Oh my God. Now that I think about it, it was probably the last like group joint. Oh so now that's even more like.
That's good juju.
There you go. It's actually even better. Oh my God, this has been so much fun.
Oh my God, I feel like we could talk forever and share so much. Thank you so much for inviting me.
No, it's so nice to actually meet you face to face and you know get to chill in one day soon. Right, Kim? We'll have a big party, like in person with the people.
Yes. Come to the hemp farm. There's so much space. We can social distance.
Ooh, that'll be so fun. You should list events on High B&B. Did you see them? They were guests a couple of weeks ago. They're my clients too, but they're really cool. We just did a big outreach, and Toronto Caribbean newspaper, which is I think it's national. They're going to be doing a big piece on them. And so, so list stuff on there. You can list events. Doesn't have to be like staying. You can list like, come check out a hemp farm, you know, and then charge people to do that.
Actually, I'll chat with you. I'll chat with you about that offline sometime because I would like to hear more about that.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, thanks, Ron. I know it was actually, thank you, Danica. It was really cool to hear about all that and to hear about how that progressed from 2018 and how it is to be working in hemp. That's a whole different angle that we don't always hear about. So thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, my pleasure. And I'm always here to talk hemp. It's the only thing that I talk about.
I'm glad to know that because if I see any hemp things, you know, where media is asking for hemp specifically, I'll send them your way because I see media opportunities like we're looking for somebody to quote on blah blah blah, you know.
Oh my gosh, why are you so good to me? I would love that.
Canna fam.
Heyo. I'm on that team. Oh my gosh, thank you so much again.
No, don't be silly. So thank you so much, and thank you, Kim, and thank you, Ron. Thank you, all the listeners and watchers, and yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And yeah, good way to spend the Saturday, and happy lockdown, everyone.
Yeah, right. At least we sort of see each other.
Oh my gosh. All right. Bye, lovely.
Bye-bye.
You.